Can somebody tell me, are there really crocodiles in here sometimes? It is Sunday, January 5th, 2025, and on this year's first edition of Sunday Sofa Time, we're talking about a wild adventure through the Mexican jungle. The final stop on our NCL Bliss cruise was the beautiful port of Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. We were in the mood for a little bit of adventure, so I found a tour company through the reviews on TripAdvisor that was offering these four-wheeler tours through the jungle, and we definitely got what we were looking for. Keep on watching, you'll see what I mean. I'm Morgan from the very unofficial travel guides. I've been making travel videos now for over 15 years of popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. I also just published my second book, Places Please, with mini travel guides for places like London, New York, Miami, and over 200 pages of stories of things that have happened to me around the world, like when I was driving a tour bus through Texas and lied my way out of a speeding ticket using God. When I get into the elevator to heaven and it starts going down, that's going to be just one of many reasons why. If you're interested in travel and theater and want to give me a little extra support, check out Places Please. It's available on Amazon now. From where we docked in Puerto Vallarta, it was necessary to take a short tram ride over to the exit to the harbor to jump in a taxi that would take us to the start of our tour. Now, I know it can be risky to book a non-ship sponsored tour in a port where you don't speak the language, where you're going to be taken far away from where the port is. I do think about these things, but we booked the earliest time slot available, and it offered us a 3-hour period after the tour was over to get back to the ship, so we figured this'll be fine. When we got to the offices, we were greeted by two friendly women who helped us complete our paperwork, explained what the tour would be like, and then showed us around our vehicles while filming the process as evidence in case we did some damage along the way. So you know, like when you pick up a rental car and you walk around the car on your own to just see if there's anything there that you don't want to be blamed for? The owners of this rental place, they kind of do that with you, and they video it at the same time just so both people know everything's okay. Neither Marcus or I had ever driven an ATV like this before, so we were excited and also a little bit nervous. They gave us time to ask questions and make sure we really understood, how do you turn off the main brake? How do you go fast? How do you stop? And then shortly before we were ready to hit the road, we got some good news and some bad news. The good news was nobody else had booked that time slot, so we were going to get a private tour. And the bad news was, while we were driving, there was no filming allowed. Yeah, kind of a fail on my part as somebody who goes on adventures and shares the information and the experience with all of you. Not being able to film a large part of it makes it a little bit less interesting to watch. She said we could film at the stops and just not while we're driving. And I had bought extra camera mounts to mount some cameras on the vehicle to get as much of the experience as possible. But she was like, nope. Not gonna happen. And I talk a little bit more about why later in this video. So anyways, in between the videos that I do have, I'm gonna be sharing some fun and funny pictures that I used ChatGPT to help create to show you what this was like. The first part of the tour started down in the actual city of Puerto Vallarta and not necessarily the really touristy part. After a longer stretch on some bumpy roads, climbing up and over a hill in the more rural part, you know, I have to tell you, the streets of Puerto Vallarta, they are not paved in gold. This is a pretty accurate depiction of what a lot of it looked like. In between, there was a section where we were on a normal paved road, but there were also then real cars going past us at the same time. After that section, we veered down into the valley again, and that's where it became kind of jungly and naturey. On the one side of us, we had the Rio Quale River, and yeah, from there, it started to feel very outdoorsy and adventure-y. Eventually, we reached our first stop, which was a cafe at the top of a small waterfall. There were Morgan-approved bathrooms and drinks and food available, and you can decide if you want to have something or not. These concrete pools are swimming holes, and we did see some people swimming when we arrived. It was very picturesque, and I tell you, those white butterflies, they're like this big. It was like Jurassic Park of butterflies. We have stopped here at the waterfall for our first little break, and these are the drink prices here. So it's about like 8 to 10 yeah, more like, you know, $8 for cocktails. We ordered just a cola and an iced tea. No idea how much it's going to cost yet, but I'm assuming not more than a glass of wine. And a glass of wine is, yeah, it's not too much. Just FYI, there are big, beautiful butterflies flying around here, but there are also big, gigantic, scary spiders. So you can see the webs up in the trees, and you can see the huge spiders crawling around in them. And we did see one crawling across the ground. Just so you know. It's really big, but I don't want to get closer to it to show you. There's a photographer riding around with us, and he stops, he like rides in front of us and stops and then takes pictures of us as we go past. And at the first stop here, he just came and showed us all the pictures he's taken so far, and they're pretty good pictures. But he said, okay, so the deal is now, if you like those pictures, you can buy a package. It's 2,000 pesos for all the pictures, and then I will make even more pictures on the way back. 2,000 is like $85 approximately. So I guess just kind of know that in advance. And I brought cameras that I wanted to put on the vehicle, and I bought mounts to mount them to the vehicle, and they said, no, sorry, you can't do that. And the reason they gave me is because we're driving through neighborhoods, and some people just don't like to be filmed, and we really want to avoid confrontation. And I thought, yeah, when you put it that way, I also want to avoid confrontation. But part of me wonders if the reason is that they want to have more ability to sell their pictures, which is fine with me too. But yeah, I wish I could show you more of what it's like while we're out and about, and what it's like to be on these things and drive them. And then, yeah, spiders. We didn't go swimming, but if I do it again and we stop here and it's in the summer, I think I will definitely plan to go swimming, just because it looked nice. And also, you get really dirty on this tour, but I'll talk more about that later too. When it was time to hit the road again, we followed our guide back to the vehicles and then retraced our path back down towards the valley, stopping at another small restaurant with fantastic views of the mountains and tequila. This place is called the Distilleria Buggy Board Sierra Vallejo, and even though we were the only two guests there, after we ordered our food and drinks, the owner came out and still offered to give us a tequila tasting.
Can't complain about that.
By the way, since I started this video, a huge snowstorm has blown up outside. It's getting very dark. I would much rather be in Mexico. So the owner came over, took us to this little area in the front of the restaurant, let us try his anejo, his blanco, and a couple other flavored tequilas. He was very knowledgeable, talked to us about the flavors, and he was only slightly disappointed then when we didn't order any bottles to take with us. You know, sometimes on these tours, the people selling their wares can be really pushy, and at least for us, on this day, it wasn't like that. By the way, the food and the views were just fantastic. I got a huge plate of nachos with cheese and beans, and Marcus got a warm shrimp cocktail that he said was really, really good. So if you do this tour, I definitely can recommend saving your lunch hunger for this place because the food was recommendable. When we were finished there, our guide rounded us up, sat us back down on our four-wheelers, and we set off back down the road towards the river. In order to get back to the offices, we had to go through the whole city again and then go out onto one of the really main thoroughfares that I think had 3 or 4 lanes and a lot of traffic, and that was also kind of harrowing, but it also gave us the opportunity to test the full speed of these four-wheelers, and you know, that was kind of fun too. At one point, my four-wheeler stopped. I somehow managed to kill the engine. I don't know how. And then I was stuck there in the middle of the road and had to push it over to the side while our guide on the motorcycle came back to us to help me get it started again. Like I said, no idea what I did to kill the engine, but hashtag adventure. Once we returned the vehicles and got checked out, we were offered the picture package again at half price. And I just decided, you know, in these pictures, this could actually just be anybody. You see 2 guys on ATVs with helmets on, and unless you were there, how do you even know that it's Marcus and I? So you're just gonna have to trust me that Marcus and I really did drive these things through the jungle. I wanna show you some more of what we did in Puerto Vallarta then before we headed back to the ship. But before I get to that, let me just tell you a little bit more about this tour and some things I think you need to know if you might be considering it. First of all, this is an off-road adventure tour. It is not like the Speedway at Disneyland. If you drive towards the edge of the road, you're going to drive off the road and maybe die. I know that sounds dramatic, but I just want to emphasize that this is a thing where you really have to drive and pay attention to what you're doing and stay in control. On some stretches of these mountain roads, there is no guardrail. If you drive off the road, you're gonna go tumbling down the mountain. And I don't have time for that. Do you have time to go tumbling down a mountain in Mexico? No, I didn't think so. So please consider your ability and the amount of responsibility you are able and willing to take for yourself on these vehicles, and be honest with you and your kids if this is an experience you want to take part in. Also, if you have that person in your circle of friends who's with you on the cruise, who's one of those people who just always seems to be like getting kicked out of bars and running into trouble because they can't act right and take everything just a little bit too far, don't take them on this tour. That will probably not end well. Another thing you should know is you're gonna get dirty and wet. So even though we didn't go swimming, you are going through parts of the river and driving on the river, and you know, it splashes up. And I wouldn't say we were soaking wet, but we did get like kind of sprinkled. We were, however, covered in dust and dirt and grime by the end of it, especially our legs. And, you know, we thought it was funny. It was a whole part of the experience and we laughed about it when it was over. But if we had like booked a massage in the Zona Romantica after that, it would have turned into an hour-long peeling just because there was so much junk stuck to us. So also, don't wear your nicest clothes. They're gonna get dirty. And altogether, just remember, this is Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. The houses and buildings and areas that you're going to be going through don't look like Des Moines, Iowa. They look like Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. The offices where the tours start are kind of in sort of a industrial area, and right next to it on one side is also a pharmacy where you probably can buy things that you should not be bringing back to the United States, or that you definitely should declare. Do you watch Border Patrol? I don't know why. I love that show. But other than that, I can say we really enjoyed this tour and we will and would do it again. And I think if I do it again, or when we do it again, I'm going to try to find a tour from them or a different company that maybe goes to one of the other waterfalls or some other places. Yeah, and from there, it was about a 30-minute walk to the famous Zona Romantica, which is an area in Puerto Vallarta that has a lot of hotels, restaurants, and bars, and an altogether fun vibe, as well as a large beach area. It's also kind of a gay neighborhood where everybody is welcome. But if you're looking for gay bars and men-only spas and places like that, this is where they will be. By the way, y'all know I have traveled the world. I have been to big cities and small cities. I've been to Amsterdam several times. I've been to the sort of red light district here in Hamburg. But the Zona Romantica in Puerto Vallarta is, if I remember correctly, the first place I have ever been approached by a male prostitute on the street. Marcus and I were walking around just minding our own business, and we turned the corner and there were two very muscly men wearing extremely tight shorts and muscle shirts, and they offered us a special relax massage at a very competitive price. And I looked at Marcus, and Marcus looked at me, and we said, "No gracias," and kept right on walking. And yes, we kept right on walking into the Margarita Grill. This is an open-air bar and restaurant about 3 blocks from the beach with a fun vibe and colorful decorations, and something about the place somehow called to us and said,
Marcus, come sit down. This is so much better than a special relaxing massage at a competitive price.
And I've said this in other vlogs about our port days in Mexico. The food and drinks in the ports we went to on this cruise were so affordable. Much better than the prices in Las Vegas, Miami, New York City, Walt Disney World. We had another huge thing of guacamole, 2 very nice sized cocktails, and it was not even $30 US. We could have easily sat there and had another round, but all aboard time was quickly approaching and, spoiler alert, not everybody made it. Can somebody tell me, are there really crocodiles in here sometimes? Like in many Caribbean ports, they have single taxis, which are always going to cost more, and then they have group buses for everybody who's sort of going to the popular destinations. They pack into these buses, and then it's a $5 flat fee. That's what we used to get to the start of the tour. And when we were trying to get back to the port, I decided to see if Uber worked in Puerto Vallarta, and it does. It was very easy. We ordered an Uber, and in the end, it cost pretty much the same as the taxi vans would have cost too. And then, like you may have seen in the dedicated video, a ton of people came casually strolling back to the ship late, and for the first time ever, I actually saw 2 people get left behind. I made a whole dedicated video about that. It's linked below, so if you want to see the moment where these 2 guys show up and get to watch their ship sail away, go check it out. We loved Puerto Vallarta. Marcus and I have tried now several times since we got home to find a good way to get there again, to just have like a week of vacation. But getting to that part of Mexico from over here in Europe is just not so easy. The connections that they've been offering us are like 22 hours with 6 hours of layover in 2 different cities. So yeah, probably not going to be doing that, but I hope we get the chance to go back to Puerto Vallarta again soon, and probably it'll be on a cruise because it's like flying to Australia. Coming soon on the Very Unofficial Travel Guides, you'll see another tour and review of what it's like to fly Delta's premium economy and my take on whether or not it was worth it this time compared to normal economy. And I'm also working on a much longer video talking about my hair experience. I know this is not necessarily travel related, but I think a lot of people are interested in it, and I know it could help a lot of people who are in the situation that I was in before I got it done. So look forward to that coming up, and make sure you're subscribed and check back soon. Oh, and I'm also getting close to planning my first trip of 2025. I think some of you might have an inkling already of what it's going to be. And as always, channel members and members of patreon.com/veryunofficial are the first to get the word on that. I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. See you soon.